guys, welcome to a new series on the channel. Starting a new series called Tank Chats here. So today we got the light tank M24, or otherwise known as the M24 Chaffee. Alright, so the M24 Chaffee, which we got going on right here, was designed in 1943. It was basically designed to replace the Stuarts that were already in the U.S. inventory that most armored cavalry regiments were being equipped with. As you can see here, this was its replacement. Upgunned with a 75, and overall pretty much liked by crews. So we're gonna hop right into this, and we're gonna do a little spiel on the M24 here. So as I said, designed in 1943. The first ones were shipped off to Europe in 1944. They missed the D-Day landings, but almost all of them were sent by November. By the time these ended production, because they were produced from 1944 to 1945 by the time of war's end, so August of 45, over 4,700 vehicles had been produced. And some of the cavalry regiments over in Europe were equipped with these bad boys. So, alright, so getting a little more back into the history of this vehicle. Like I said, it was overall liked by crews. This saw service from 1944 till 1953. So this tank was used during World War II and Korea. It was mostly... Alright, so for World War II service history for these guys, like I said, they were sent after the D-Day landings in about November of 44. Some of the armored cavalry regiments, such as where we are now, 2CR, actually used these vehicles. And I will throw a picture in here so you guys can see them actually being used in action. And I'll throw... So, World War II, these guys were used in France and Germany, obviously. So, they saw service in the Battle of the Bulge, which was one of the big last push of the German offensive. And the Battle of the Bulge, they were sent in, again, these guys were sent at the last minute with their reconnaissance vehicles. So, they didn't favor too well against German tanks because they weren't matched for them. Like I said, the armor was not meant to stop them, but they were meant as a delaying action and to hold off the Germans as much as possible, which they ended up doing. After 44, going into 45, these tanks were part of the big push into Germany. These were still a newer vehicle at the time, so they were less widely used as when they were in Korea, but nonetheless, they still saw service. They were in the push into Germany, and like I said, I will put a bunch of pictures in here of them actually being used in combat during World War II in Korea. And I'll link a video down below to where I actually saw the story of the mantlet being struck during the Korean War. So these were used all the way up in the push in 1945. There was a plan to send them to Japan. So as I was saying, these vehicles were meant to be used in the invasion of Japan if it came to that necessary. They were favored because it was a light vehicle, only weighing about 40,000 pounds. They were favored to work in the jungle positions to be sent over there. But I guess the government gods didn't see it necessary, and not too many were sent over in time for the last-ditch efforts in the island hopping campaign for World War II. So like I said, it was sent to mostly mechanized cavalry or armored cavalry regiments. So, like I was talking about, the armor profile here earlier had 25 millimeters on the front, about equivalent to an inch, and 38 millimeters on the turret. So the turret was a little bit thicker. There are actually some stories from the Korean War where the mantlet actually saved the crew's life. So I believe there was an engagement at like 1,800 meters, 1,800 yards, that the T-34-85, which was also a tank of the Second World War, that had been given to the Chinese during the Chinese offensive during Korea, went up against these guys. So these guys were sent into Korea at the last minute. Like the last minute. These things were sent up and they were quickly mobilized as fast as possible. So that engagement, approximately where the vehicle was struck, was right on this spot of the mantlet, which ended up saving the crew's life. Most of the time, these vehicles were not meant to go tank-on-tank combat, but they were thrown in at the last minute, and these tanks were used against them. So it mainly actually saved the crew's life. As a brief service history on the vehicle, and like I said, we'll get more into the tour and show you a little more around the vehicle. All right, so we'll get started here from front. We'll start from where we're going around the sides and get to the rear. So, as I said, overall this vehicle is liked by crews. It was a vast improvement over the Stewarts, and they really liked the off-road reliability. It was a lot more reliable than the Stewarts were off-road. So, max speed, about 56 kilometers an hour, or for you guys that are not European, be 35 miles an hour. But if you take off the no fun switch and you crank up the engine, take out the speed governor, I would reckon and barely say she could probably hit 40, 45 miles an hour. So pretty fast for a light tank. So we're gonna start here. So you got two 30 cals up in the front here. You got ball mount right here for the 30 cal. You got the 30 cal that will be inside the turret. And this spot right here, up here, will be for the gunner sight. You got the M6 75 millimeter gun, which will be outfitted with 48 rounds that will be held inside this vehicle. So starting with the front, you got your headlights obviously, and just like you see on today's vehicles, you got the blackout, you got the marker lights. And just like in today's inventory, you got the bumper markings. So from what I read here, basically this would be either 3rd Armored or 3rd Armored Cavalry, 42nd Cavalry Regiment, Fox Troop, the 6th vehicle. Hey guys, so the cameraman's hopped up here on top of the tank with me. So as we're going to get into, you would have your co-driver right here. You can see the co-driver's periscope will be right here. Then you have the driver will be over here. There's the driver's periscope. And this armor was sloped so it would be more effective. Around about 25 millimeters of armor, equivalent to like an inch and a half. So enough. It was mainly, because this is a reconnaissance tank, it was mainly meant to stop like small arms fire and assist the infantry in fire support and reconnaissance. So you go on top of the turret here. I'll show you another position. So you got your mount for 50 cal right here, or whatever the crew want to mount. It could either be a 30 cal or 50 cal. Good old famous Ma Deuce. And you have the gunner would sit right here in the turret. And that should be the gunner's periscope. His sight will be right here. So this is the gunner's sight. Like I mentioned earlier, you have the two 30 cals, so the other 30 cal will be up here in the turret, which could be manned manually by the loader or automatic by the gunner. Commander's hatch, and then over here, this is where the loader would be. You see his hatch here. You have an extra mount back here for more comms equipment, another gun, whatever they'd want to put on top. And you can see here, this is where the radio, the antenna will be mounted for comms. And when we get to the back of the vehicle, you can see down there, that's how infantry and troops would talk to the commander. There's a radio box inside with the phone. As you press talk, you push the talk, and it would go feed right directly into the commander. So that's how that would work. You got your engine back here. This is the engine deck. Engine deck, about range of 100 miles and 110 US gallons is what this guy would run on. Like I said, you take off the no fun switch, the speed governor, you could probably crank her up to about 40, 45 miles an hour. So we'll hop off the turret here and we'll get more into the profile of the vehicle. All right, so getting into the side of the vehicle, you have your drive sprocket here. You have your 5 wheels, 5 road wheels, the rear road wheel for guiding the track, and smaller support wheels up at the top. This was a torsion bar suspension system, hydromatic, basically an improvement over the Stewart because it could go off, like the crews said about this vehicle, it was better off-road performance. Now, so as I mentioned earlier, basically here, this is actually what one of your track links, right? In one of the storage boxes here, there are extra tracks stored. So these are similar to the tracks of the M18 Hellcat, but also it was on suspension. It was designed for this vehicle. So you want to take a look at that? It's rubberized tracks, a little more meant for off-road. And if they want to, they could put the duck bills or the spacers on for better off-road performance. Put that back up there. All right, coming around to the back, you have your rear lights, obviously, or reverse, your brake lights, all that stuff. But you also have the blackout markers, just like in the front. So they're driving at night, you can see the vehicles. Engine deck, and as we mentioned earlier, don't know if we can get this to open up or not. We'll give it a try. Yeah, that probably ain't coming open. But this will be your radio box right here. This is how basically the infantry would call up and communicate with the commander of the vehicle. So any troops supporting the vehicle from behind or wanting to mount on the vehicle would be talking to the commander through this, through the antenna. You have a stowage bustle right here. Anything you can put, you want fuel cans, extra track links, rations, boxes, anything you want back here, this is what this would be used for. So, and you can see they have the markings on the rear as well too, same as the front. And they could honestly put them anywhere they wanted to, as long as it was noticeable by troops on the ground. So they could have it on the rear fenders, they could have it on the front, just like we showed earlier. All right, so I want to say thank you to you guys. Hope you liked the fun. For tuning into the very first episode of Tanks Chat featuring the M24 Chaffee. Like I said, overall, very well liked by crews, good service history, and some were still being used by third world countries all the way up until the 90s. So overall, good service life for this vehicle, and hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned for the next tank. See you guys in the next one.